Hello everybody, this is Mr. Yanders. I'm principal here at Cheston Elementary School. Mr. Killen is along helping me out here. What we wanted to do today is we wanted to, since we could not celebrate the closing ceremony the way we wanted to, we're going to go around and just recollect from the rooms, talk about some of the teachers that I remember. I've been at Cheston for about 17 years. We teachers listed some other teachers who have been in the room, so we're just going to go around and talk about that right now. So this is the library, and this is the Cheston Library. This has been redone many a time since I've been here. Lafayette came in a couple years ago and put the beautiful pictures up on the wall. We had Mrs. Hetzel here now. Before that we had Mrs. Nace. Before that we had Mrs. Vasquez was in there for a little bit. Mr. Heck. I'm trying to think who else did I remember. Mrs. Hamilton was in here as well. Let me look on my list here. Those are the people I remember here. So library here at Cheston Elementary School. We're going to miss this library. We're going to go into a much larger library at the new building. But this is what we remember as. All right, Cheston, hello. Now we are in the half of our gym. We have bags for students to pick up right now. But some of the people I remember here in the gym were obviously Mrs. Smigo and Mrs. Gator are here now. Before that we had Mrs. Harmon for a little while. We've had Mr. Bonstein, who was here for a very long time, Mr. Williams, Ms. Curry. Those are some of the few that I remember being in this gym. We will miss this gym and the closing of the wall and every part of the assemblies in this gym. The floor, since I was here, was redone 2 times. I remember the darker color it used to be, and now it went to a lighter color, but a lot of after-school events in here, a lot of fun in this gym. All right, here's the principal office. I have been lucky enough to be here for the past 6 years. Before me in this office was Tracy Piazza, and Tracy Piazza was a huge mentor to me and showed me the ropes. Before Miss Piazza was Mr. Shoemaker. Before Mr. Shoemaker was Mr. Steckel, and before Mr. Steckel was Mr. Heddle. And then if we go out over here, was the assistant principal room. This is where my office was when I was assistant principal here. Before me as assistant principal, Mr. Hightower was assistant principal here, if I remember properly. We had a few, and now lucky coming into our new building, Mr. Killen is an assistant principal. Also in this office, we had a guidance counselor, Mr. Val Bowman. He was here for many years, and I remember Mr. Bowman. And then over in that office next door, we had Mr. Romani, and we also had now Mrs. Sonnenblick. Now in the office for where the magic really happens, we have Mrs. Kapora and Mrs. Rush in here now. Before that, we had Mrs. Sheets, who was at Cheston for many, many years, and we had Mrs. Orr, who was there. And I apologize because I know there were many more before that, but I don't know who they are, so thank you for all the people that have spent time in this office. And obviously our nurse at the building, for all of my career here, Mrs. Biggs has been in there. So Mrs. Biggs, we also have Mrs. Rush helping out. Mrs. Payne was in here as well helping out, so we had a lot of help with the nurse's office. All right, in the instrumental room, right now we have Mrs. Heckman. Mrs. Heckman's been here a couple of years. Before Mrs. Heckman, we've had Mr. Wrestler. Before Mr. Wrestler, we had Mrs. Williams and Mrs. Clubundy, Mrs. Sylvius, and Mr. Smith. Those are some of the teachers that were in here in our instrumental music room. And this room right now is the music room. Over to that side, what the music room used to be. And this was Mrs. Miller's home for my whole career here at Cheston. Mrs. Miller retired last year, and Mrs. Prez came in, did an amazing job with the Masked Singer, for those of you that look back on Cheston Cougar to see that. This side is still the music room now, but before that, there was this big accordion wall that would separate that. And then in here it was a math room, it was a data room, it was a lot of different things. I know Mrs. Mahosky was in here, Mrs. Bowman, Mrs. Sacco, or Mrs. Akimi now. Lots of different people grace this room as well. Custodial office, right now we have Mr. Gino Finocchio. Before Gino, we had Mr. Pete Rivera. Before Pete Rivera, we had Skip Kohler. Before Skip, I think we had Dale Brubaker. Dale Brubaker was here before that. So those were the head custodians that were here in my time here at Cheston Elementary School.